All right, guys, how's it going? Today in this video, we're going to take a look at a video mechanical explanation going from a pronated position with the lead arm throughout the drive phase, and then transitioning into a supinated position with the lead arm as we begin to initiate pelvic rotation and then get into front foot strike and arm acceleration. So kind of starting off, we'll kind of discuss what pronated versus supinated means. So pronated essentially means that we're going to be palm down, or think in pitching terms, thumb pointed down to the ground. So we'll see that oftentimes and pretty much with every single pro example that I can find, where their thumb is going to be pointed down towards the ground during the drive phase portion of the delivery. We'll take a look at Aaron Nola here in a second and kind of go over that. So what does that mean and what does that help us do? So being in a pronated position, ultimately, if you were kind of just sitting there watching this video, if you kind of rotate your palms to where they're facing down, and then kind of go beyond that to where your thumbs are facing down, that's what we would, typically would be a pronated position. That's just kind of a quick test you can do to see what pronation means. If we flip our palms upward, that's a supinated position. So if thumbs are up or palms are upward, that's if we kind of transition that and roll our hands over, that's going into a supinated position. So that's just kind of the standard of what pronated versus supinated means. So we'll kind of go in here and we'll get Aaron Nola past handbrake here. So as we get Aaron Nola past handbrake, what do we immediately see him do? As we can see here, he's going to find that pronated position right after handbrake, meaning thumb is pointed down there. So there we can see that thumb is pointed down. And that's ultimately meaning that he's in a pronated position. What does pronation help us do during the drive phase? I covered this in another video where we just are specifically looking at lead arm pronation during the drive phase. I'll link that video below here. But ultimately what that's going to help us do is that's going to help us hold lead arm tension and kind of hold that lead arm to where it's going to help us kind of continue with that slightly counter-rotated position with the torso during the drive phase, which is going to help us delay that horizontal abduction of the lead arm and that premature rotation with the torso. Remember, when we're at front foot strike, optimally, we want our shoulders right in alignment with the target while our pelvis is open at least a 45-degree towards the target, or between 45 to 90 degrees towards the target. What this is going to help us do is delay that torso rotation, that premature torso rotation that's going to cause us to fly open early, while also help us delay that horizontal abduction with the lead arm that oftentimes causes that premature torso rotation. So as you can see there, getting back into this example, we can clearly see that Aaron Nola is in a pronated position there. And as we extend him out, we're going to see that he maintains that pronated position all the way throughout the drive phase. So there, we can still see that his thumb is pointed down, meaning he's in that pronated position. Now, as we get, and we can still see there, he's still in that pronated position. Now, as we get into our lower half rotational move, as we call it, which is kind of the next phase that extends beyond the linear drive phase, what we're going to start to see is that as this pelvis starts to move, as this lead leg starts to kick back in this direction, kind of pulling backwards to initiate that pelvic rotation, what we're going to see is that Aaron Nola here, and any pro pretty much, is going to go from a pronated position with the lead arm to now, as they start to horizontally abduct that lead arm, meaning pulling the arm back in this direction, what you're going to start to see is that they're going to go from a pronated position with the lead arm to a supinated position with the lead arm, to where when they're done supinating, their palm is going to be facing upwards towards the sky. So that kind of all occurs, that initial horizontal abduction and supination with the lead arm occurs as the pelvis begins to initiate rotation during the lower half rotation phase of the delivery. So keep an eye here on his pelvis as we go and discuss this next portion of the delivery. So as we see here, we can start to see that pelvis is opening, meaning it's closed there. Now we're starting to get some rotation, right? So as you can see there, as he's getting into front foot strike, that's about front foot strike there, we can see that pelvis is more open than it was going back into the drive phase. So now let's keep an eye on, as that pelvis begins to rotate right about there, look at what's happening with the lead arm here. the lead arm here is now going into supination. So what do we see at front foot strike? Now we see that Aaron Nola here is in a supinated position with the palm facing upwards, thumb facing upwards there. So this is just a great example of what going from pronation to supination looks like. So one more time, as we can see here, pronated there, thumb facing down there. And then as we see that pelvis begin to initiate rotation and we see him open up into front foot strike, we see this arm here rolling over into supination. So boom, pronated, supinated, pronated, supinated. So that's a perfect example of what we want. Meanwhile, as we see, as I discussed earlier in the video, we see the lead arm going into horizontal abduction. And as that move is occurring, we see that he is going from pronation, supination, pronation, supination. And then what do we see as we get him in here in the front foot strike? I've covered this in other videos. That's about where Wade accepts right there. We see that now his shoulders are right in alignment with the target, which is a byproduct of sequencing and timing the move of pronation to supination, and delaying that horizontal abduction a little bit, if you will, so that we can correctly sequence the upper half to where when we get to front foot strike, we're in a perfect position where we have the pelvis open, at least at a 45, facing towards the target. We have the shoulders right in alignment of where we're throwing the baseball, or slightly closed from where we're throwing the baseball. We never want to be open. So this is just a perfect example here. Hand in a supinated position. Shoulder is now horizontally abducted, where we pulled back this lead arm in this direction. And this is just an ideal scenario. So what we'll see with guys that struggle with this is we would see them more in a position like this, where Aaron Nola is way past front foot strike, where right at front foot strike, their shoulders are already open. And essentially they're not going to be sequenced correctly to where they get maximum hip shoulder separation into front foot strike. So this is just a quick video kind of going over what we're looking for when we discuss going from pronation to supination during the delivery. I have about 6 or 7 drills that we really like to use to teach this mechanic. So go ahead and check those out in this video series. And I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you found it informational. Thanks.